We are. Hey guys, what's going on? It's Filmington. I've got a few special guests with me. I think they might both be coming out of retirement for this. Jeff Airtime, he's this way, and then underneath we have Stove, formerly Stove Collector, also formerly Stove Investor, also formerly Stove, also formerly Stove Sports. All right, so let's get this started. We're going to talk about some players, baseball players. A lot of people are probably overreacting this month. There's just been about 3 weeks worth of games, but there's some outliers. There's some guys that are performing really, really well, better than expectations, and there's some guys that aren't doing so well, hitting right around that Mendoza line, maybe a little bit worse than that. So let's start off and by the way, let's make this a little bit interactive. We're going to acknowledge the comments. If I don't see them, then one of these two special guests will see them and raise them to us as a group. But we're going to start by talking about Ronald Acuna, who is super hot right now, 887 slugging percentage, 563 WOBA on the hierarchy of young studs. He seemed to be at least baseball card values. He was third to start the season behind Juan Soto and Fernando Tatis. What do you guys think, guys? Is Ronald Acuna right now, is he the best player in the game?
I think statistically you'd have to say yes. I mean, he's proven why he was the consensus #1 pick on fantasy. He's just a younger version of, he's Mike Trout, what Mike Trout was 5 years ago with the power and the speed. And I know fantasy owners breathed a big sigh of relief when he didn't hit the 10-day DL. They said he'll probably be back maybe in the lineup tomorrow, but I don't see how you can argue against him. How about you, Stove?
I wouldn't say I'm an Acuna hater, but I'm definitely on the more Soto side of things. And just based on some things he's done in the past with his attitude or whatever. But right now he is at the top, digging into these numbers. He's getting lucky. He's got a 420 BABIP right now, but every other metric he is improving upon his career high in. So, for instance, average exit velocity 97th percentile, contact rate 84%. That's a career high. Barrel rate, he's 94th percentile, and that's off of Baseball Savant. So he is getting lucky, but you can't just dismiss what he's done. I mean, obviously he's not going to hit over 400, but if he even with some regression, which isn't really that obvious based on the underlying metrics, luck doesn't account for this. He's doing something special so far,
and he's doing it really with not a lot of help in the lineup. I mean, Ozzy Albies is down. Freeman's not hitting up to his potential, so he's really carrying them on his back. Really, the whole offense.
Yeah, I think he's playing with so much energy right now. You wouldn't know that their record is well below 500 just by seeing
I saw him beat out in infield single live. I saw
just
it. And
just
my
ground
jaw
ball
dropped. He beat out a slow ground ball
to a guy that caught it cleanly. Into a guy that has a phenomenal throwing arm, Javi Baez. Or maybe it wasn't Javi Baez. Javi Baez might have been the guy where he went second to home on a ground ball or something.
I think so.
Insane. Yeah, he's doing all sorts of crazy stuff right now. Hopefully he doesn't injure himself by doing stuff like this. I think that abdomen strain was something to do with him diving or something. But yeah, I agree with you, Stove. 14% K rate is the thing that stands out to me the most. It's basically half of his career rate. So last year we saw the walks elevated, but he was striking out a lot last year, smaller sample in 2020. But this year he's got a 12.5% walk rate, which is still really good. And actually there's an ESPN article, which maybe you guys stumbled upon too, but it showed how the disparity between him and Juan Soto. Juan Soto was always the guy with elite plate discipline. Acuna didn't really have that yet, but this could be a real sign of a leap in his skills, because that article kind of breaks down he's not chasing as much as he was last year. His chase rate is way down, especially on breaking pitches and off-speed stuff. He's also not whiffing as much this year, especially on breaking balls. So he's showing now that the stolen base rate, that might drop a little bit, and that might hurt his WAR. But based on this small sample size, if it's real, we could be seeing potentially barring health injuries and stuff like that, we could be seeing like a 12 to 15 WAR player this year, which is unreal. If he keeps up with that above average defense. Steals, he's in the leadoff spot, and he's been a guy that usually could kind of pencil in for 30 to 40, but this year it doesn't seem like he's running as much, but I guess we'll see. It's still very early, but if I have him on my fantasy team, maybe I want him to run a little bit. If I'm holding his baseball cards, I'm not really concerned with running. I feel like last year, the year before, people were like, oh, if he goes 40-40, his cards will explode. Or if he goes 50-50, his cards will explode. Well, he doesn't need to do that anymore. He can still be the best player in the game without doing that, with just stealing 25 to 30 bags, which is still more than pretty much everybody in the majors. And
before you move on from Acuna, I know you mentioned about his ab strain. And I see a lot of talk on the internet, and it's important to note that it's an ab. It's not an oblique. I see a lot of where people are getting them mixed up. It's not like
oblique is really bad for hitters.
Out for a month, or Springer, which tend to linger all year. It's an ab, which is serious enough, but it's nothing like an oblique. So he should be back up the speed within the next few days. It's not something that they anticipate being a long-term thing.
All right, next player, Vladi Guerrero Jr. He showed glimpses of brilliance, probably in the fall league, definitely in the spring. Now we're seeing it in real major league games, guys. Slash line, 368, 493 OBP, 632 slugging. What do you think, Jeff? Is this real?
No fat jokes this year with Vladdy. Yeah, it's real. It's not flukish with his BABIP or anything. He's hitting the ball hard. I think his exit velocity is top 5 in the league right now, which it speaks volumes right there. Stove, what do you think?
He does have a little bit of flukiness with the BABIP, but that's not the story here. The story is his fly ball rate. So the big knock on him his whole career has been, why are you hitting the ball into the ground? You have elite exit velocity off the bat. All you have to do is just angle up a little bit. He's doing that immediately. He is right now, his career ground ball rate has been 50%, which is crazy. That's crazy high. It's 39% right now. And he's just having immediate dividends. He's still hitting the ball extremely hard. He's 94th percentile average exit velocity. He's making good contact. One interesting thing I saw with the metrics was 61 61st percentile for barrel rate. To me, that shows that there's improvement on the power. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't strike me as somebody that's going to be in the middle on his barrel rate. So 400 BABIP, he's getting lucky so far, but that's not the story with BABIP this early in the season. I mean, it's just essentially noise. I don't really care about the BABIP unless somebody's like extreme outlier one way or the other. So the 400 BABIP doesn't do enough to just kind of dismiss what he's done so far. It's very encouraging so far what he's done.
Yeah, BABIP's not the type of thing you can really look at in isolation. You want to look at it with other stats, like you said, Mark. And I, in my research, I saw ground ball rate, like what you just spoke of. So the fly ball rate is up, ground ball rate is down. It was 55% last year, 39% this year. Big difference. Also, he's pulling the ball a lot less. So down from low 40s to low 30s, and 17% walk rate, 15.5% K rate. Great to see. I also saw that he's crushing fastballs. So you got to wonder that maybe taking off that weight has allowed him to get around a little bit quicker. So just all in all, definitely the signs of a true breakout, I feel. Next up, Byron Buxton. He was on the shelf for a few days, injured. Slash line now of 421, 476, 947. I think he actually is back today, and he made a few dents today in the box scores. Not running as much this year. One steal. He only had 2 steals last year. Maybe it's an Acuna-like situation where they're trying to preserve his health by having him not run, which I completely get, especially from Buxton's perspective. What do you guys think about Buxton starting to Stove?
I mean, he he's just gonna hurt us again. He's just gonna hurt us again. 480 BABIP right now, that's extreme. Again, I only care when it's extreme. He's almost at 50% of his hits, or the time he hits the ball, are landing for hits. However, 99th percentile average exit velocity. He is absolutely crushing the ball. 74% contact rate, which I think was a pretty decent improvement. It's intriguing. He is flashing those skills that he showed in very small samples thus far in his career. You know, he came up as a 5-tool player, and everybody has kind of moved on. He's in that post-hype phase, but the guy just has not been able to stay healthy in his entire career. As a baseball fan, I hope he does. It would be nice to see, but I am not willing to allow myself to get hurt again as a baseball fan. But he's on the Twins, and I'm a White Sox fan, so whatever. He's good. It's exciting.
Well, Buxton's kind of a sore spot for me because in fantasy, he's someone that I drafted every single year, and every single year I get burned by him.
Well, everybody did.
Of course, I didn't take him this year, and what do you know? He breaks out. To Phil's point about him not running as much, and we touched on this in our little few minutes that we had of our pre-show, is he put on, I think it was about 12 pounds of muscle mass over the winter, which really explains his exit velocity. And I mean, he's hitting bombs to center, right center.
99th percentile, dude. That's crazy.
Yeah. But so I would not expect him to I mean, he used to have 40 steal potential. I think we could tone that down to 15 steals, but I think all the other numbers are going to be there. And he is real. I mean, he's got the pedigree. It just hurts me to say it because in fantasy this year, I gave up on him. I said he's going to get hurt, which he did, but he's back already. So
he's also an incredible defender. He's an incredible defender too.
Yes, he is elite.
For sure. Yeah, the one area where he struggles in, and he doesn't need to really change this aspect about him to fully break out, but the walk rate, I think last year he had 2 walks. I think this year he has 2 walks, and he had them in the first game of the season 3 weeks ago. So that's something that probably won't change anytime soon, but that's okay. But also right now, hitting 421, I mean, no matter what his barrel rate is, exit velo, average exit velo, et cetera, it ends up being, I mean, his batting average is going to come down. He's never hit 270 in a season even. So, you know, this is probably the breakout year. Is he going to hit 300? Maybe. Can he hit much above that? Maybe not. I said the same about Fernando Tatis. He proved me wrong. I don't know. But going back to his health, just to keep ourselves all a bit modest here. Yeah, he's only had 1 season where he's had more than 331 plate appearances, and that was in 2017.
That's not that many.
Don't expect a lot.
That's not even. That's not like he's only had 1 full season. That's not a lot.
Exactly. All right. Next up, we would be remiss to not bring up Mike Trout in this episode. Last year, maybe some possible signs of an early decline with Trout, being that it was maybe his first season ever where he didn't finish like top 3 or 5 in WAR, especially with the Baseball Reference metric with WAR, where they count defense a little bit differently, counting in defensive run saves. So even though he had no errors, his defensive metric was like terrible versus Fangraphs, which uses UZR. But clearly it wasn't a great season for him. Even looking at his offensive numbers, walk rate wasn't really there. You know, nothing really stood out. But this year, so far, I believe he just hit his 6th home run today, 385 average, I think 508 on base, 769 slugging. This is just coming in today. So OPS 1277-ish. What do you guys think about Trout? Is he the best player in the game? Do you trust him if you owned his cards? Do you think that he's going to continue to play at this high level for the rest of the season and for a few more seasons? What do you guys think?
I don't buy it. I don't think he's very good. Well, I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but there's a thing going around in baseball where it's once Trout leads WAR, then stats have started to stabilize, and you can actually look at stats. Like once Trout becomes the leader in WAR, okay, we're enough into the season that things are like normalized. I don't think there's too much to dig into. The guy's not done at all. I get that we're comparing him against one of the best players of all time, like former seasons worth of production from him, but he's extremely good. I don't see, there's no red flags in the profile whatsoever that I'm seeing.
The only thing I would say that could potentially hurt is, and I don't even want to use the word hurt, his card prices. It's just it's been talked about a lot, is a lack of playoffs, and that's no fault of his own. You know, he's on a team that has no pitching, unless they want to dedicate Shohei just to throw off the bump every fifth day, which I think they should do, but they're not going to do. He's not going to make any inroads on the playoffs this year, and it doesn't look like it's going to happen anytime in the near future. But that being said, he's still the best player in the game. It's just a shame. As great as he is, his greatness could even be more nationally recognized with a playoff appearance or two.
Yeah, I think I brought this up before. I think playoff accolades, accomplishments, like that have to do with the team itself. I think that's a little bit overblown in baseball, just because in baseball, I think there's like more of a sense of distributed accountability and distributed opportunity across a team. Everybody matters kind of the same. In other sports, you have guys that take more shots, have more playing time, have a more pivotal or critical position, quarterback in football, where if the team wins or loses, it's really your fault. In baseball, it's like, well, I was sort of like 1/9 of the problem, 1/9 of the equation from an offensive perspective. And yeah, maybe I played shortstop or center field and I got more balls hit to me. But other than that, I mean, you don't have like a pitcher that goes 4 or 5 times in the playoffs, or maybe you do with Madison Bumgarner. But that would be where like there's a real difference maker, where like one player truly has more accountability and opportunity than everybody else in baseball. But I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying for sure. And I think part of the argument you're trying to make is that he'd be more recognized if he was on a national stage. The Angels, LA is a great market. Angels don't really the Dodgers really get a lion's share of that, I feel. The Angels you don't really see much from, and Trout doesn't really have that personality where he's really well known outside of baseball, especially to just normal folks. All right, next up, we're going to talk about Trout's teammate, Shohei Ohtani. Okay, apparently I was off on him. I think you were too, Jeff, because we thought that his number one asset was his ability to pitch. He showed that in his rookie year. He was downright dominant when he was healthy. He would go deep. He was efficient. He threw gas. He had multiple pitches. But this year, and maybe, we could have seen a hint of this in spring training where he was absolutely tearing it up. And they're giving him a lot more opportunity to swing. He's not just like out there 2 or 3 times a week. He's out there, it seems like, 3 to 5 games each week. The day after he pitches, maybe not I think at one point he actually was in the lineup like when he pitched, or he had 2 starts.
Every day up until he got the blister.
Yeah, right.
Up until the blister problem, yeah.
Yeah, so slash line right now, 309, 345 on base, 655 slugging, hit his 5th home run tonight. He has 2 stolen bases. Kind of surprising. Even though we kind of know he has that speed, they're letting him run too. What do you guys think about Ohtani, Jeff, starting with you?
Yeah, I'm still in the same camp. I mean, I think he's an elite pitcher if he pitches, whereas he's only a very good hitter offensively. But I think that was written into his contract why he went to the Angels, so he could bat 3 or 4 days a week. I think it's an error on their behalf because he is the number one and you only need a couple great pitchers in a playoff scenario. He is the number one that they need for that. But unless he dedicates himself to pitching to start in 25 to 30 games a year, I don't think that's going to help the Angels get to the playoffs. As great of a player as he is, and I mean, I think his cards should continue to skyrocket, just because he's doing unprecedented things. But as far as real life baseball on the field, I just don't think he's doing any favors for his team playing both ways. Even though what he's doing is incredible.
What do you think, Stove?
I love Ohtani. The guy's a freak. It's unbelievable what he can do. He shows flashes of elite production on both sides. The consistency is the problem. And personally, I kind of have a different take. I think just make him a hitter. He helps you every single day, and I think his hitting will improve when he focuses only on that. If I had to pick one, with the starting pitching, like just pitching in general is just so volatile. So many more injuries. I think so far, I really was kind of digging into his hitting stats so far. That's more interesting to me because there's a larger sample size. And he has a 370 BABIP right now, but all the metrics are showing like a solid 300 hitter. And that's not common anymore. And I think if I had him in fantasy, and I know different systems treat him differently, I would rather have him as a hitter. And I don't like blisters for pitchers.
Only in daily lineups where you can change every day because you don't know if he's going to be playing from day to day. Well,
sure, yeah.
Let me put it like this to you guys. If from here on out, for the rest of the year, he only pitched or he only hit DH'd, do you think the Angels stand a better chance of making the playoffs as him as a full-time hitter or as a full-time pitcher?
Well, based on the way you frame that, I think the Angels might have more of a need for a pitcher. But if you're asking me, if I was like a fantasy owner, where do I want him to play? Assuming that it's not Yahoo and you can play him in either spot with like CBS or some of the other interfaces, probably, I would pick. I think it's based on context, what your team needs the most. I have him right now in CBS, and I have a great pitching staff, and I'm happy to slot him in utility. But if you have one utility spot, you already have somebody like Yordan Alvarez, or if you have a glaring need with your pitching staff, you don't have the depth, then you might have a different idea there. I don't know. It's a tough call, and right now I'm kind of in between you guys. Like based on what I've seen now, and he's seen the injury bug firsthand, and if he was to take multiple years away from focusing on just hitting, that might hurt his ability to be an effective hitter long term. So you can't really have both, is what we're realizing. I think he's not going to be an A+ hitter and an A+ pitcher at the same time. It's very unlikely that will happen. Maybe in the same season, but not in the same month or the same 2 or 3 week stretch. It's interesting. He's great for the game, even without the global appeal. He's just awesome. He's just awesome for the game.
And as far as collectability is concerned, don't get me wrong. Him doing both is the best for his cards.
Yeah,
I mean,
agreed.
I just want to get that clear because that's what's bringing him all the attention. So what he's doing now is really the best investment wise. If you're a Shohei Ohtani collector.
Agreed, 100%. Thanks for taking us back there. Going down the path too deep into fantasy and stuff. All right, some other notable names. Bo Bichette. I think did he tie a meaningful record recently with like the most multi-hit games early in his career. Like I think it was a Joe DiMaggio record. I don't know if you guys heard that, but I looked into his stats and I'm like, okay, he's doing very well, but he still has an OPS in the high 800s, which isn't anything crazy. So we don't have to focus on him. JD Martinez is killing it, but he's sort of a hobby irrelevant guy, and I say that as a Red Sox fan. We saw the big breakout in, was it like 2017, 2018? He still didn't finish top 3 in MVP voting because he doesn't really have much of a defensive prowess, really, and he DH'd a lot. And, we saw his card prices go up, and I think they went down just as fast in the offseason. Let's talk about some pitchers. I know people in the comments are mentioning Corbin Burns. So 3 guys that stand out to me. I'll just name all 3 of them, and then I'll have you guys chime in. Tyler Glasnow. I know he's a guy that you've been talking about for years, Jeff. You've been on him even before he broke out. You really like the stuff. You like the frame. You like the heat. He has a new slider this year. He's featuring it 28% of the time and probably with above average command too. It's effective. It's a plus pitch. It's making his fastball a lot better. I think his fastball is like around 97 on average. His slider is probably around like 87. So gives him something in between that and the off speed or the with him, it's the curveball. Corbin Burns is another guy who, like Glasnow, is coming from about a top 20 pitcher in the game, probably heading into this year, to maybe a top 5 pitcher in the game, or potentially, at least that's what it looks like with Corbin Burns. 24 innings so far, 40 strikeouts, no walks. I believe for pitchers that have gotten 40 strikeouts, it's like never happened where you haven't allowed 1 walk into a season in the history of baseball. So he's been absolutely filthy. made some changes to his pitching repertoire. He's throwing his cutter a lot more this year, which averages 96 miles per hour, which is very, very fast for a cutter. He's throwing that, and he's throwing his four-seamer a little bit less, which is about 97 miles an hour. And then Trevor Rogers is the other one that I was thinking of. Marlins, his cards have gone up quite a bit too. I think 2015, one of the Bowman products has got his first Bowman autograph. Marlins throws really hard from the left side, and he's got 3 good pitches too. Jeff, I know you're probably clamoring to chime in. So what do you think about those guys?
I'm not even going to touch on Glass now. I think I've done that enough of that on previous shows. Trevor Rogers is a guy I texted you about, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I'm like, he pitched this afternoon. He's a guy you want to watch pitch, not just the highlights. He really, and I don't throw this name around loosely, he really reminds me of a Randy Johnson. The way he's got a really big wipeout slider. He can sit comfortably at 95, 96. And the Marlins really, I mean, you've been hearing about this kid since they took him in the first round a few years ago. And with him and Sixto and Alcantara, I mean, they're really putting together one heck of a staff. I love Trevor Rogers. Corbin Burns, what's not the I see Scotty tradition. Scotty must love the 1-2 punch with Woodruff and Burns. Burns, I remember you mentioning him to me last year, and last year I kind of took off. I didn't follow baseball as closely as I usually do, obviously with only a truncated season and no fantasy baseball. I did not really. I remember him 2 years ago pitching out of the bullpen, and he had problem throwing strikes. I remember him giving up a lot of home runs. I don't know what the hell happened last year, but wow, did he get his act together. There's certainly a lot to be excited about Corbin Burns for sure.
With Corbin Burns, is it spin rate related too? Because I know that's something that Woodruff probably gained, and they call Cincinnati Spincinnati. I wonder if the Brewers also have that going on for him too.
His spin rate is up there with the elite as well. I mean, which just makes his control even more impressive. Sometimes the guys with the incredible spin rate seem to lose it and find it again, but not Burns. He's just, wow, has he been consistent? Nothing not to like there.
Stove.
Yeah, they're all exciting. Woodruff was kind of the guy going into the season that had, at least from the fantasy side, most of the attention. Sleeper Cy Young candidate and everything. But Burns, man, he's one of the stats that I like to look at because I have heard from researchers that stabilizes the quickest for pitchers is K rate minus walk rate. So. I mean, 40% minus 0. That's pretty darn good. I think it's over 40. What is this K rate? Did you refer to that earlier? He has like 40 strikeouts and 0 walks,
and 40 strikeouts in 24 innings. So
yeah, that's
not sure what that would translate to, but yeah, I think it's pretty good. We know his walk rate's 0. I can tell you that.
So you do minus 0. So anyway, so what he's done so far is incredible. And I know the Brewers' plan, there's all these questions about what are these teams going to do with these guys for workload coming off of this unprecedented short season. And the Brewers came out and they're like, just slap 100 innings on each of our guys. That was their plan, which I thought was hilarious. I don't know how many innings he threw last year, but if you slap 100 on, and I mean, I don't think this is possible for anybody to keep up this rate, but I mean, you're looking at a very special season. Trevor Rogers is another one. He was one of my sleeper guys in a big NL only league that I do that I was able to get. He was kind of pushed. Like Jeff was talking about, that rotation is just absolutely ridiculous. There's so many high upside young arms in there, and he kind of was. I mean, he wasn't the forgotten guy, but everybody's talking about Sandy Alcantara. They're talking about Pablo Lopez.
Sixto Sanchez.
Sanchez.
Two of their guys are injured right now with Eliezer. He's supposed to be quite
Eliezer Hernandez.
quite good too.
Right. I mean, he's been unreal. He looked good again today, I think, against like Baltimore. So who cares? But he's been lights out, and he's still a rookie, so he could win the Rookie of the Year. I believe he's still eligible for that. I don't think he's exceeded the rookie minimums. Tyler Glasnow has been unreal so far. I can't fully buy into any Rays starting pitchers. Tyler Glasnow's career high in innings pitched is 112. I personally, as a baseball fan, I want them to let him go, and they're letting him go so far, which you would think, who was the guy they took out in the World Series? Blake Snell. You'd think Blake Snell is like, dude, come on, seriously? Like, you kept taking me out early, and now you're letting like Glasnow go? I hope they let him go, but I don't believe that they will. I think he's going to end up with like 150 innings of elite production.
Yeah, and the walk rate could end up regressing to norms for him, which, the 3 pitches is good enough for him to break out, but if he keeps the walks down like he has for the most part over the course of his first like 4 starts, that would help his ability to go deep into games. Even if they take him out after 85 pitches, maybe he's in the 7th already. It's similar to the Dodgers. Like, it's hard to trust Walker Buehler when you know that he's only going to go 6 innings. From a fantasy standpoint, it hurts. From a baseball card standpoint, that hurts. That hurts their ability to compete for Cy Youngs. They're not getting the same amount of production. Their K numbers are not going to be as strong. Quality starts might be affected too. Like Julio Arias went 7 innings yesterday. I'm like, oh wow, like they actually let him go 7. That's
There's
crazy.
one team that makes me more angry than the Rays is the Dodgers. And to comment on Lou, so Lou said Blake Snell won a Cy Young. I wish I could have seen more of that. You know what I mean? Like, I understand from the analytical side, I understand where they're coming from, and I understand the arguments against it. But as a baseball fan, I want to see the best players play more often. I want to see Tyler Glasnow have a longer leash. I think Blake Snell could have done more. I definitely think he could have done more in the World Series. The Tampa Bay Rays are probably the smartest team in baseball, and I'm an idiot. So I don't know.
But you can't be smart all the time.
As a fan, I agree with you. You want to see him go out and throw 175 to 200 innings. But you got to remember, they're looking at the eye towards the playoffs. And if they can keep his innings down and have him full strength for the playoffs, that's what it's all about. I mean, you get yourself a couple studs in the playoffs and you can make a deep run. The Dodgers are just an embarrassment of riches. Julio Urias is their number 4 starter. He could front probably about 20 to 25 rotations out there, and he's their number 4 starter. It's just ridiculous.
Dustin May is like the 6th man.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And one of the things that's standing out now more than ever is just like how much better and useful Shane Bieber, Jacob deGrom, and Garrett Cole are versus everybody else, just because they're like few of the only pitchers that don't get babied. Like, I feel like this year, most teams are going to be wary about their pitchers having significant innings leaps, which you're going to not be able to avoid based on the limited season last year. But, this year, 180 innings might be the old like 200. And I don't know who else is going to reach 180 except for those guys. And you'll see it. Like Bieber going throwing 110 pitches, and Bauer might be there too. But there's very few pitchers.
He doesn't get suspended.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but case in point, the reason why, I mean, Steven Strasburg 2 years ago, the Nationals rode him hard, and it paid off. They won a championship. He struggled last year with injury. If you saw him this year before he went down with injury, he doesn't look the same. So, I mean, they're paying the price now, but they reaped the benefit back in 2019. It's really it's a fine line you have to walk with these elite starting pitchers.
Right. We saw the toll it took on Madison Bumgarner.
Absolutely.
He's what is he, like a 30-year-old at this point?
He's the oldest 30.
Like a 39-year-old.
He's a human batting practice machine. That's what he is. Exactly. We had a comment here from Papino Man.
Who is this Papino Man?
I'm not familiar with him.
He's a troll. Can somebody ban him?
Rays threw away the World Series to satisfy nerd analysis. I do think it's important to talk about with the Rays. Like, I don't say that they're the smartest team in baseball, or maybe the smartest team in baseball lightly, but you can't just dismiss the fact that a team with that payroll was in the World Series based on one decision. Like, give me a break. If they didn't pay attention to the analytics, they wouldn't be there. What was the disparity in payroll for the Dodgers to the Rays? I mean, they're just full. They squeeze every bit of value out of every single player, and it could be very frustrating. And I think that was as far as you can go when they took Blake Snell out. That's as far as you can go, where you're following the analytics. Where it's like, dude, I watch baseball. I've watched a lot of baseball. Like, this doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? But they've made those decisions all year. It's just how it is. I still think they're an extremely well-run team.
Yeah, I do as well. John Boy breaks down that taking out early Blake Snell moment in the World Series, and he provides a lot of pretty strong points against the analytics. So
yeah.
So, you can't do everything right, even if the analytics pointed one way. Sometimes you've got to take in more data points, which maybe they didn't. They let it. It's harder to do it on the fly. I could only imagine how what's his name? Kevin Cash. He does the right thing, and he did the right thing against the Yankees. Seemed like 99.9% of the time, and then maybe he didn't do the right thing.
That reliever Anderson, who had been one of the best relievers in baseball, he had just gotten teed off on like 5 times in a row. It just doesn't make any sense. I don't think you can. My main argument is I don't think based on that one decision you can just say analytics is complete garbage.
Right. Agreed. All right. So let's move on from we started with the players that have been hot, probably outperformed their expectations, and now we're going to move on to the guys that aren't doing so well. Simon Daughtry made a comment about how it's a mistake, he thinks, to buy into the COVID season with Trout and thinking that was a potentially a sign for a decline. And I agree with you, Simon. But what about Glaber Torres? Glaber Torres sucked last year. And this year, 182 batting average, 297 on base, 218 slugging. Really, 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 really bad. What do you think, Airtime, about Glaber? You worried?
I am worried if I'm a Glaber owner in fantasy or if I invested a lot in his cards. It's just not him. It's the whole Yankee lineup isn't hitting. But you can't blame it on Babbitt. You can't blame it on anything. I mean, he's having a hard time just putting the ball in play with any kind of authority at all. He just looks lost up there. I mean, I watched several Yankee games this past week, and every game is the same. I mean, you got to be a little worried about him. I think that it's time to drop him down in the order a little bit myself. How about you, Mark?
He was probably the most depressing one to dig into to see what's going on. It's ugly. It's bad. He's third percentile in exit velocity. Yeah. Now, he's also making contact at a rate of 73%. So you could say, oh, well, he's not swinging and missing much. If this is the production he's having when he hits the ball, then what happens when he starts missing?
He can't get any worse.
he's still young, and he's still shown the ability to do so. So I think the only way that you're not completely out on him is just based on faith alone, because the stats are not backing it up.
And that's what makes it so worrisome that he is such a young guy. He's not 36 like Joey Votto and just saying he's down at the end of his career. He's young guys. You're going to be worried.
Sometimes it takes a full year worth of at bats to get over that sophomore slump, and maybe he's not fully over it yet. That's one justification for it. One of the things that I didn't like about him was that when he broke out, well, sort of a breakout in 2019, I think he hit 14 home runs, 14 of his 37 or so home runs against the same team, the Orioles. And one might say well, he's in that division. He's going to face them 20 times anyways the next year. But Chris Towers from CBS Sports Fantasy Podcast, he did some digging, and he researched guys that had hit that many of their home runs against one team. And despite the fact that they played against that same team again the same amount of times the next year, what he realized was that the production was more flukish, and they were more likely to disappoint the next year and have below average production overall, including against that team the following year. Glaber, he's got a great pedigree, great profile. The power, does he have 40 home run power? Can he hit 35 plus home runs again? I don't know. The juice ball might have helped out, and we could probably spend some time talking about that. This year's ball, how they deadened it, but exit velo's higher, and it seems like just as many balls are getting hit out. First, we thought not as many, but so I don't know what kind of effect that would have on him. But Glaber, I'm a little bit worried about. I mean, he's a guy that everybody thought like, oh, he's a future MVP type candidate, but he doesn't really have the walk rate. He doesn't really have the defense to get him there. So if the offense isn't like A++, then he's not a future MVP candidate. Maybe that's okay because only so many people get to win one MVP, especially with Trout in the league.
I wonder if the Yankees are sweating giving up Chapman for him, losing all those years of Chapman. I don't know. That's a tough one. That's a tough pill to swallow.
Hey, the Cubs won the World Series with him for the 1 year they rented him. So,
I mean, it definitely worked out for the Cubs. I mean, even if Glaber was an MVP caliber, you gotta, when you go that long without winning a World Series, you gotta take what you can get.
Indeed. All right. So next up, Francisco Lindor just signed that mega extension with the New York Mets. And right now he's hitting 171 with a 327 on base, 195 slugging percentage. I think he actually homered tonight. What do you think of him?
First at bat tonight, yes.
Yeah. What do you think of him, Jeff?
I mean, he'll be okay. I don't think he's going to put up the numbers he did in Cleveland, just by virtue of going from the American League to the National League. The Mets, they brought the fences in, so it's a fair park. He's hitting the ball. I've seen him hit into some bad luck. I wouldn't be too ultra worried about him like I would be Glaber. Some of it might be pressing because of the big contract he signed. But I think a month from now, his numbers will start to trend up. As soon as the warm weather hits, I think he'll be okay. I wouldn't expect to see his stolen bases be what they have been in the past. But you could say that about a lot of players.
I was just going to say you could say that about a ton of guys.
Yeah.
Right. What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, I'm right there with Jeff. I wouldn't be that concerned about him. His BABIP is 180, which is ridiculously low. He's his contact rate 93%. That's elite as elite gets. He's just not making quality contact, but he's still making contact. I think he'll be fine. I think maybe I don't know. I think we have probably seen peak Lindor, to be honest. But I think he's still a very, very good player, all-star caliber player. I wouldn't be that concerned about him at this time.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything you guys said. For me, it's not cause for concern. It's 3 weeks. Also, less than that if you consider the amount of games that they missed because they were facing the Nationals, the first series of the year, so they missed some games there. So if you look at his total number of at-bats, I mean, it's really not much.
Yeah, and they got rained out a couple times, snowed out once.
Yeah, he'll be fine.
Yeah.
All right, next up, Giancarlo Stanton. He's healthy, I think. He's batting 170, though. His career batting average is 267. On base percentage right now is 254, slugging 358. He is striking out 34% of the time. He has 3 home runs. You guys worried about Stanton? Are you kind of expecting this? Do you have high hopes for Stanton this year?
I mean, he's got to be up there for one of the most frustrating players in baseball. The guy hits the ball harder than anybody. Max exit velo, 100%. That's how it is pretty much every year. I think StatCast has the Stanton filter when you want to see the hardest hit balls because it's like all him. The guy just can't stay in the field, much like Buxton. I think even as a Yankee player, I think he's good for baseball because he has pretty much more power than anybody. I don't know. He's a very hard player to analyze, honestly. But I would not take the sample size thus far and say he's done. He's still hitting the ball extremely hard. He's going to strike out a lot, but that's a fundamental shift in the game that's more accepting of higher strikeout rates. So,
yeah, I'm not
he can stay healthy.
I've never been a big fan on Stanton, but everyone knows it comes down to the health with Stanton. If he stays healthy, there's no doubt he's going to hit his 30s, 35 home runs. But that's just probably the biggest if in baseball if he stays healthy. So that's just what you get when it comes to Stanton.
He's a streaky guy. He's going to have these stretches. I think he'll probably put together a decent year. I think they're going to be a far cry away from what Yankees fans thought that they were going to give him when they drafted him. So if you look back, they've had him since 2018. So this is the fourth year, partial year last year, but still, this is the fourth year. He has 48 home runs since he joined the Yankees in 2018. He had 59 in his MVP season in 2017 alone. And I know there's some New York publications that have started to say that they signed the wrong Marlins outfielder. They should have signed Yelich. It's like Yelich was like a 15 or a 2020 guy, in 2017. He had yet to break out. I think the fly ball revolution, some luck and some skills improvements certainly helped him.
And a huge
ballpark. Yeah, exactly. So to say that is kind of silly, to think that the Yankees, and not saying that they just sign home run hitters because they do have LeMahieu, but come on, like, what are they supposed to predict? Like all the breakouts, right? Let the Brewers have one. All right, they have a terrible offense this year. All right, Ozzy Albies, 148 average, 262 on base, 333 slugging. You guys worried about Ozzy Albies? He's probably never going to be a top two player on that team from an offensive standpoint for as long as Freddie Freeman and Acuna are there. That probably helps. That probably hurts him from a hobby perspective. Yeah, exactly. You could loop Ozuna in there as well. It probably hurts him from a hobby perspective, get lost a little bit in a nice market. What do you guys think about Albies? You worried?
I'm not worried.
No,
I'm not worried because, as you know, I've spoken about Ozzy Albies in the past. I'm just not a big Ozzy Albies fan, mostly because of his size. He's a little guy. I know you can point to Altuve and a few guys, but he's a little guy. I mean, he's gonna get hurt. I think his swing is way too big. I've just never been a big Ozzy Albies fan, and I think this year is. And I know there's a ton of Braves fans on YouTube, so I'm pretty much pissing them all off with this. But I'm just not a big Ozzy Albies fan. I think he's a good player. By no means think he's a great player or in that next stratosphere. I think he's a 260 hitter with 15 to 20 home runs and 15 stolen bases. I just think that's the player that he is.
I'm a big Albies fan. I like the fact that he's a little guy, and I like the fact that he is kind of hidden behind these bigger names. I think at the end of Albies' career, people are going to say, like, how did we miss what this guy was doing? He is a career 295 hitter. He is very good. He's a fun player to watch, high energy player. His BABIP, as far as this season, his BABIP is 150, which is the lowest of anyone we've talked about so far. His contact rate is 80% right now. He, along actually with his teammate Freeman, are two of the unluckiest players in baseball right now. I have zero concern about Ozzy Albies. He's going to have a good season. And Jeff, how can you root against a little guy? That's why you should be a fan. I like Albies. I think he'll be fine. I think he's good.
Yeah. I actually, in my my research, I saw that. I agree with you that of all the guys that are disappointing right now, that we're talking about, I think Ozzy Albies is the most unlucky of all. Like you said, really low BABIP, 140 versus wherever his career average is, probably close to double that. And his hard hit rate, based on Fangraphs, is up from last year. His walk rate is up, which has kind of always been, something that he hasn't really excelled in. Walk rate, the K rate is also down. So I see good things to come from Ozzy Albies. I don't see him eclipsing Acuna anytime soon, but I see him being a very useful player.
Two great things.
Next up,
Albies.
Let's talk about Johan Mankata. This is a guy that's stove. Yeah,
I was just going to say two great things about Albies, which I can't deny, is he's got probably one of the best batting spots in all of baseball between Acuna and Freeman, and the park he plays in is a great hitter's park. So fantasy-wise, I do think there's still a lot to like in Albies. I just don't think he's an elite player.
Next up, we're going to talk about Johan Mankata. This is a guy that Stove kind of PCs a bit. And he's hitting 200 right now, 310 on base, 283 slugging. He was really bad last year, but COVID looked to be a primary cause for that. I think it affected like his lower body. He brought that up. He used that as an excuse. But right now he's worse than he was last year. So what do you think about this, Stove? What's going on?
I am very concerned. He's not making much contact, and when he does make contact, he's not hitting the ball hard. He's hitting 200. His BABIP is 300, which is basically average, which means he's not getting unlucky at all. I'm just gonna assume. I mean, he's not the same player since 2018. He got COVID last year. He did bring that up, as you can argue, as an excuse, but he very clearly, there was a defined shift, and it was very unfortunate timing to have his breakout season come into a truncated season, and then he got COVID. But he has not been the same player at all. I still think he has the skills within him, but based on the underlying metrics so far, you cannot argue he's been unlucky. He has been really bad, and he was bad last year.
Stove, you're killing me. As a White Sox guy, I wanted you to tell me there's hope for him. That there's a silver lining, because I've always liked Mankata.
Dude, I just threw it in there. I try to be as objective as possible. I talk about players no matter what team they're on. I still think the skills are within him.
They are.
All you have to do is watch the guy. He's a physical specimen, dude.
Yes.
But unfortunately, when you watch as much as I do, you see him look lost at the plate. So I'm just hoping, again, I talked about, I don't remember who it was earlier. You dig into the statistical analysis side of it, and then when you don't see anything there, you're relying on hope, and hope is something that you can't quantify. That's what
I was hoping you were going to dig into some minutia and give me a little glimmer of hope.
Dude, you got to dig to the Mariana Trench to find it there, because based on
he's getting ready to turn things around. I really like Stove said, his physical potential is great. I'm still holding out hope for him.
So am I. He's been bad.
Yeah.
All right. So next up, a couple guys that are hitting a $184 right now, and they're both pulling the ball more than they did in the past, which is hurting their batting average, as well as hitting the ball to the ground too much. And that's Michael Conforto and Charlie Blackmon. Conforto /line 184, 326, 237. Blackman 184, 298, 327. Blackman, if you guys recall, a lot of people were speculating that he might hit 400 last year, and his card saw a pretty serious spike probably 2 or 3 weeks into this season in 2020. Obviously, he did not hit 400. He didn't lead the league in batting average. I believe that was Juan Soto. I think, was it LeMahieu that led the majors in average? I forget. But what do you guys think about Conforto and Blackman, starting with you, Jeff?
Conforto, really, he's an enigma to me. He has his beautiful swing, but he just seems to have trouble making any sort of consistent contact, which is a little worrisome. Mets expected big things out of him this year, so I'm definitely worried about Conforto. Blackman on my fantasy team, he dropped to about pick number 100 on me. I'm like, wow, what a steal! What a steal! And he's been very disappointing for me this year. Still, hitting in Coors Field makes up for a lot. I expect his numbers to be there by the end of the year. I'd actually be a little bit more worried about Conforto than Blackman at this point. Even though Blackman went 0 for 2 again today with 2 walks. He is drawing his walks, so it means he is seeing the ball. So hopefully the bat is soon to follow.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jeff. I would have more concern about Conforto's production this year versus Blackman. Blackman is he's not really showing any big problems. He's been unlucky so far. 200 BABIP, 80. He's 84% contact rate. I think Blackman will be fine as long as he can stay healthy. One thing I saw looking into his stats is he's showing a career high walk rate, which is very interesting for a guy who's been around as long as he has. So once the ball starts falling for him, and if he can continue to have a good eye for the pitches, I don't really have any concerns about Blackman. Conforto is a little bit more concerning. He is hitting the ball extremely weakly thus far, and I feel like the sample size, like one of the comments was saying, it's only been a handful of games or whatever. Like, we're kind of getting to that point that these discussions are worth having if you're really a baseball fan, that you can kind of start to get hope or concern about a player. Conforto is one that I would have concern for. He's not really getting unlucky so far, and when he makes contact, actually, according to Baseball Savant, he has yet to barrel a ball. So that's the biggest red flag I saw for him.
Yeah, that's interesting. Charlie Blackmon, for me, he's 34 years old. I did note that his K to walk rate was very solid. But I mean, from a hobby perspective, if you're buying Blackmon right now, sitting on his cards for a long-term standpoint or for flips, I guess maybe for flipping, it could make sense, but you're probably doing it wrong if you're speculating on Blackman's cards right now. But I think he could have a fine year. I think him and Conforto, I think that they'll probably have fine years. Conforto, I talked about earlier a little bit with Lindor. The Mets haven't played a whole lot of games. They're dealing with a really small sample size for him.
Sure.
He did have like 5 hits till like yesterday. He was doing really bad. But I mean, it looked like he almost was about to, on the brink of a breakout last year. I think he hit 326, small sample size. I think most of the projection systems had him hitting like 260 this year. But this is a guy I think that could still hit mid-20s home runs and still have an average in the mid to high 200s, and I think he could still be a useful player for that team.
He's definitely a useful player. I don't want to just compared to Blackman, I'd be more concerned about Conforto, but Conforto is not like garbage or anything. Like, I think he'll be okay, but there's some concern. I don't think we're going to see what we saw last year.
Right. Somebody just brought up Javi Baez. Abel in Vegas said Javi Baez just hit a grand slam. He's a guy that was on the list originally. We can cover Javi Baez. I know originally he was on our list to cover. He's hitting 200. He's doing a little bit better than the rest of these guys because he does have 5 stolen bases, so at least he's contributed with that. 250 on base, 433 slugging. But this is a guy that he hit 203 last year. So I think he came into camp trying to correct his swing. And is it true? I think I heard somewhere he tried to emulate Bryce Harper from the right side and come in with less of a pronounced leg kick, which I think makes sense as a starting point for him, even at the cost of some power. I think that makes sense just to get the average somewhere around 250 at least. Are you guys concerned with Javi Baez? Starting with you, Jeff.
No, I like his skill set. I think the whole Cubs lineup was struggling earlier in the year.
They've been horrible.
Yeah. But Chris Bryant has gotten going. He's actually, his BABIP is, I think his BABIP was hovering around 230, and his exit velocity is up like 20 miles an hour from last year. He's just destroying the ball this year. I know he has 5 home runs, but I saw another 3 or 4 balls he hit like off the wall. I know you asked about Baez, but I actually have watched quite a few Cub games, and much to my surprise, I think he's actually cutting down on his swing a little bit, which I never thought I'd see out of Baez. So I don't know if Rizzo's getting in his ear or something, but I'm not worried about Baez. I think Baez numbers will definitely be there by the end of the year.
I think there is some reason for concern, but at the end of the day, when you have a 2020 player, I don't think it's that unreasonable to think Baez will have 20 homers, 20 stolen bases. You can't just dismiss them. Honestly, I think he's a fun player to watch because, like the commenter was saying, it's all or nothing. The guy just like sells out completely. And I mean, when he hits it, it goes a long way. He has apparently 6 homers now. He's got 5 stolen bases already. His contact rate right now is unbelievably bad. It's 48%.
Even for him, that's bad.
That's bad. His career contact rate is 69%. This is one of those things where I feel like he's going to figure it out, really. But he's had some pretty ugly at bats so far. But again, like Jeff was saying, the entire Cubs team has not done well. But I think Baez will flirt with 2020 easily.
Baez can look terrible one at bat, and then his next at bat look fantastic. He's really an odd player, but like you said, he's really fun to watch.
Yeah, and maybe
I hate the Cubs, and I'm saying that
if he ditches that gigantic, ridiculous leg kick, maybe he probably loses a lot of power. That's probably where a lot of it gets generated from. Even though I think Bill James scale, he's around like 70 raw power or something, but yeah, that's interesting with Baez. All right, and he's an exceptional tagger, good defender, and a really good tagger. So make sure you guys watch some highlight reels on him tagging. I don't know if that many exist out there, but most of you guys probably watch the games. You see that. Yeah, it's insane. It's insane. All right, guys. Well, we're up at the hour mark. I don't know if you guys had anybody else to cover. I know, Paul Goldschmidt's he's doing okay now. Freddie Freeman, he's got 5 home runs now. We probably don't need to cover him. You guys have anybody else you want to mention?
Hobby-wise, I wanted to know your guys' thoughts on Wander Franco and Fernando Tatis. What do you guys expect out of them this year? Tatis, of course. How effective do you think his numbers would be? Not being able to take his hand off the bat on his follow through. What kind of numbers do you think he's going to put up? And Wander Franco, Joey Wendell is actually kind of blocking him. Who would have thought that coming into the year? But Joey Wendell's having a great year. And I know the Rays are tinkering, maybe moving Wander to second now instead of third base. What do you guys think about those 2 players for the remainder of the 2021 season?
Tatis, me and Phil were definitely wrong on Tatis. I think we had the under on his batting average and the rest of his production and whatever. He was exceptional. I think it's just a shame for baseball, first of all, to have one of the faces of the game go down with such a bad injury. He's back. He homered immediately, but his shoulder's not right. I think he has like 5-6 errors already. And you could say, oh, that's just on defense, but that's pretty telling that there's some serious issues there. And he needs surgery, but the team's not willing to just send their $300 million man and just forget this season. They have World Series hopes. I hope he can stay in the field. As far as the remainder of the season expectations, like, I don't know. I think we're going to end up wishing we had seen a full season of him.
Yeah, I'm kind of torn right now because on one hand, I agree with you, Mark. On another hand, I'm like, well, if they brought him back like literally 10 days after he was placed on the IL, then he must be pretty close to like being 99% healthy. Clearly, he doesn't look that way. His numbers don't show that he's healthy. Maybe he's just in a funk. Maybe he's worried about re-injuring it. Having both hands on the bat during the follow-through, I get why he has to do it. He probably feels a little awkward doing it. It's something he just started doing that might be affecting his ability to maybe get around on. I mean, he's a tall, kind of wiry guy. It's difficult enough for him to get around on those tight fastballs that are up and in towards the chest. So maybe he's having a hard time adjusting with that. And then really looking stupid on the breaking stuff outside, it seems. But yeah, I don't know. I think once I see a week of him at close to peak Tatis levels, then I will maybe not be concerned anymore. But right now, I'm a little concerned. Baseball card wise, I wouldn't be buying his stuff right now unless it sunk a little bit more. Like, for instance, 2019 Top Series 2 Gold PSA 10. I want that to come down closer to like 1,200, 1,300 versus where it's at right now, probably 1,800. I'm not ready to buy into Tatis. And if I am buying into Tatis, I have to be thinking really long and hard into, is this a long-term strategy? Is this a 1 to 3 year, 5 year play? I don't think so. I think with somebody like Juan Soto, I feel a little bit more comfortable with 3 to 5 years down the line, and maybe even Ronald Acuna at this point, because of the strides that he's made with his plate recognition, which look pretty real at this point. So, and the other guy you brought up, Wander Franco, the Rays are going to do everything in their power to keep him down as long as possible. He just turned 20 years old a month ago. They're notoriously delaying guys as much as they possibly can to preserve them. They needed him for their playoff run. They were probably one of the first teams ever that made it to the World Series, despite like a 180 batting average, like team batting average, somehow got him past the Yankees. Like it was ridiculous. Like the Astros like outperformed them, even outpitched them in like 3 games and out-hit them. And just the Rays are making all the right plays, the right time, the timely hitting, not making errors. It was insane. So this year, I think, and I made a comment in the chat that at the minimum, I think they'll hold them till at least that Super 2 deadline. So the first deadline, which is like early or mid-April, has to do with service time. It gives the teams an extra year of control. They effectively get a 7th year. And clearly they prioritize that, or else they would have called him up last year and had him play a few games. They clearly needed him in the regular season of both playoffs. The Super 2 now, yeah, Super 2 is, I think it's a little vague and it could vary, and you're not going to know it till a few years down the line, but it's around like the first week of June for most players. And that doesn't have to do with team control. That allows teams to get a benefit from a salary perspective during arbitration, but it only affects like the top X players of each position, which you'd think that Wander Franco would be a perfect fit for being like top at his position. So I think at a bare minimum, we don't see Franco till mid-June, which means that he probably won't be in Top's update. It'll be in Series 1 of next year if this is true, but maybe it gets delayed a little bit later than that. Who knows? Again, he just turned 20 years old. Bobby Witt's another one. I have no idea what the Royals are going to do with him. You know, at least with like teams like the White Sox, the Padres, you kind of have like a track record of like taking chances on guys. You don't really know what the Royals are going to do. And the Mariners with Kelenic, you know, they gave us a sneak peek of their intentions, but we don't know what's going to happen there.
Give us a sneak peek.
I would expect Kelenic to be called up. I'd be surprised if he wasn't called up within the next 5 days. So I'll call that Kelenic getting called up soon. Yeah. All right, so I think that is it. Hour and 7 minutes strong. Thank you, listeners, for attending. Thank you, audience, and I appreciate the interactive nature of the discussion. And for those watching the replay, tell us what you thought. We'll answer your questions if we can, and like and subscribe if you could. Thanks, guys. Thank you, guests, Jeff and Stowe, for coming on board, coming out of retirement. And take care, guys. Filmington out.
See you, fellas.